and welcome to the Masterclass here. This is March 16th, 2021. We've just rolled one calendar year over the world ending with COVID-19 last year. And, it's fun. My dad was like, on March 11th, he's like, hey, it's my birthday. He goes, well, now this is the anniversary of COVID-19 and being officially declared a world pandemic. Now it's synonymous with your birthday. Congratulations. So that's a thing. In any case, as we roll over one calendar year, I remember where I was a year ago on the 16th, at home, working at home instead of at the office, etc. There's been some things changing since then. It wasn't the pandemic that kept Stacy Campbell away from our call back in February. He had, I would say that's probably got what would be one of the most dynamic storms they've had in Texas. Stacy, is it ever? I mean, it's easy for us to, with modern revisionist history, but that was pretty legit, right?
We call it snowvid here, is what we call that.
I love it. I mean, it was so bizarre that it was the ice, it was the snow, it was all of it, right?
It was everything. They say that the meteorologist, the last time it happened was like 1890 something. Wow. Like was the last time something of this cataclysmic happened here. So
I mean, it's pretty bizarre. So it was to the point where if you joined us that day, Stacy went to the office to try and get, they had rolling blackouts. It was out at home, but he thought maybe at the office, and then it blacked out at the office. It didn't even have cell signal to be able to just broadcast with his phone. So really appreciate him immediately reaching out, looking to get back on the books, back on the schedule, to bring it because of the content that I'm going to say he's the most. We normally try not to load these guys up with a bunch of prep, but Stacy Campbell, I'm going to guess, has several hours of preparation going into this session that he's going to bring today. We're going to take we're scheduled for 90 minutes. Listen, if we're good at the end of an hour, that's fine. I'm willing to bet Stacy Campbell, I said this to John Kane yesterday, if anybody could fill 90 minutes with added value content, Stacy Campbell would definitely be the one. He's coming up on 29 years in the business. Is that this summer, Stacy, or did you already roll it? I know you started in 92.
May. Yeah, it's this May.
May coming up, which is remarkable. So Stacy's been all over the country here, starting really from Missouri, but now resides in Austin, Texas. And you probably know that name. You're like, why do I know that Stacy Campbell name? Well, national champions in 2018. Remind me, Stacy, 2019?
2019?
Yeah, Silver Cup?
No. We our division split in 2019. Gotcha. We had a great year, but we were in the two divisions at that point.
I gotcha. And then listen, what's great about Stacy is that he gave a message a couple years ago at SLC, and he literally, you know how you can get YouTube at 1.5x speed? Stacy Campbell delivered, I'm going to say 45 minutes of content in a 30-minute message, and it was epic. It was really good. But if you watch it on replay, you need to slow it down. So there was just so much to get through. And I'm really excited for today's topics here today. Stacy, I'm going to let you lead the dance, and you go ahead and start anywhere you want to go. I might chime in here with some questions, but really going to let you just kind of jam away, brother. The floor is yours, my friend. Thanks for joining us.
Well, I appreciate it, Trent. Obviously, the first round was a little rough trying to make it happen, but we are here. And Trent, I'm sure everybody has said this, or some people said this, but a great big applause to you, and thanks for putting these on. For helping us get prepped. We didn't have SLC and we didn't have roundtables. We didn't have some of those things, but obviously a lot of the content that's been on these have been very positive and things that are more timely even than asking the question at a roundtable at SLC, because a lot of times that roundtable at SLC doesn't apply to the thing that we are asking about until July of the next year.
Yeah.
So I really kind of applaud you and the people who kind of taken the time to make this happen. So I got two topics for you today, and maybe a little, depending on what time is and what you guys have questions on, we can work from there. I want to give you an opportunity, to answer questions and things of that type. So I'll try to keep my part pretty tight. And then if there's things you want to kind of work with that, then we can come back around to those things. So the first one, that kind of is on the list is, I had I asked our DM staff because, hey, what is it that you would say as a division that we're good at, that is our strength. And unanimously across the board, it was push weeks. Push weeks are really one of the things that divisionally most of our guys go, I feel like we're good at those particular things. So this is not something as a division that we've always been good at, but we've been really good by kind of strategy and preparation and focus to become good at them over the last 4 to 5 years. And it's been a big game changer for our DMs when it comes to CPO. But more importantly, the development of our branches and our district managers has been so much stronger because of the push weeks. And then from a BM standpoint, from a branch manager standpoint, really making sure that the SC2 pushes are strong, because making 50% of sales during a push week is just a major retention tool for people. This is a number that, whether you're a district or a division manager or whatever your position is, so for 11 of our 17 new managers in 2019, so people who started in 2018 became managers in 2019, and they may not have started in 2018, but they were a 2019 branch or new district, had 10K pushes the previous summer. 11 out of the 17 did. Then the next summer in 2020, out of our 14 new managers, 10 of them had 10K pushes. So 10 out of 14. And then this year we have 29 new managers going out, and 16 of those 29 have had 10K pushes. So what happens is, what's happened because of that is now there's just kind of a feel that that's what you do. Like, it's just part of the process. So, in 2018, when South Texas, who now is their own division, was all part of Lone Star, and that when we split apart, there was no adding more parts to ours or parts to theirs. It was literally the exact same territory lines. They just picked up about a third of what used to be Lone Star. We had 30 reps do over 10K. In 2019, after we lost a third of the territory, we still got 30 people over 10K for our SC2 pushes specifically. That's our SC2 push by itself. And then last year, just in Lone Star, we had 41 people hit $10,000 in sales. 17 of those people were over 15 grand in sales, and 10 of them over 20 grand in sales. So that was last year's SC2 push. So, I gave a message 2 years ago at SLC about strategic planning. And this is a specific example of how we made SC2 a very specific strategy, and how we focused that strategy, and over the years have had big results. And if you have something you want to improve, that you want to improve CPO, you have to have a strategy for it. The great mind of Trent Booth, I will always kind of remember, Trent, I don't know if you remember this, that car ride from the Austin airport to a DVM meeting, and the company was kind of, we had went way up, like we had spiked in 2000, 2001, 2002, 3, and then things had kind of tapered back the other direction. And I just remember Trent going, hey, we're not entitled to growth. Like, we had grown from 92 to 2003, and then 2004 went backwards, and people were like jumping ship. Like, they were just like, I'm out of here. It was like, I can't, what do you mean we're going backwards? It's like, that's crazy. And I just remember Trent going, we're not entitled to growth. I remember sitting there going, that's true. We're not. Like, we don't, there's, just because you had a good year last year doesn't mean you're going to have a good year this year. You have to strategize and plan and grow, because, as I would say, there's always, here's what I did, here's what I want, and there's some gap in between, and I got to fill the gap, whatever the gap is. SMRAs, push weeks, something, there's a gap that I have to fill in order to do that. We, a few years ago, realized this was a gap, and it became something that we focused on and put a strategy in place for. And so these are the type of understandings that if you want to grow an area of business, you got to strategize, you got to have focus. And then I would also add this, you have to have patience. Okay. You have to have patience. You can't just do it one time, and if it doesn't work, you bail on that particular thing. We see this too much in our business, where we chase the rabbit, like, oh, that's the new shiny object, and we chase it, when we might have been focused on a previous object, and we left the previous object right when we were about ready to have breakthrough on that object. Okay, like that particular object, we may have been having that breakthrough. So I would just encourage you, one of the things, regardless of what you get out of this part, somebody just muted. So what's your focuses for, can you guys hear me? Okay, good. I was like, all of a sudden it popped up, I was muted. So what are your focuses for 2021? And what is it that's gonna, what is the gap? Like, what's the gap between what you did in 2020 and what you're gonna do in 2021? Obviously, at this point, we should talk about summer, right? Like, what is the difference in your summers? And what's in the gap? Like, what's in that gap that you gotta fill in? And specifically, what is the strategy that you have to do that? Not, hey, I'm going to get SMRAs. Okay, that's awesome. Like, but what does that even mean? I'm going to get SMRAs. Okay, like what is the date? What's the plan? What's the attack? What's the thing? Hey, I'm going to have a good push week. Okay, well, you can't just say I'm going to have a good push week and have a good push week. I'm going to, focus on 10K fast starters. Well, what's your plan? Like, what's the strategy? Could you lay it out that an assistant could do it if you weren't there? And you look at what the Eastern region is done with recruiting and SMRAs. And last year, they specifically came in from years of growing a strategy. They didn't get good at that last year. They exploded last year, but they didn't get good at it last year. They were getting good at it the whole time. So patience, I think, sometimes is a big deal to help people out in the process. So, okay, so let's go back to the push week thing specifically. So I would suggest that you go to Vector Connect and watch Dane Espegard's message titled, "You Can't Just Flip the Switch." Okay, I would suggest if you want to have a good push strategy, I would start there. Okay, that message back in 2016 was a message that, or 2015, 14 actually, was a message that moved us tremendously. So I would go back and watch that message. It's relevant today. There's nothing different. Sure, some of the basic strategies may be a little different, but the relevancy of that message is really, really big. It's the essence of the message that push weeks can't be something you walk into and just have success with them. You have to plan, weeks, if not months in advance. So in 2014, I heard the message. 2014, we sort of implemented it. I'm sorry, in 2015, we sort of implemented it and got 3 or 4 people to 10K, in our SC2 push. And then 2015, we did a little more and got 7 or 8. And then by the time we got to 2016, we were getting big results from it that comparative to what we'd ever done. And in 2017, we went over 20 people over 10K, which was, at that point, it was like, oh my gosh, we just broke every single thing we could ever possibly think of. And then those 2016, 17 numbers where you started hearing the development that came out of that. 11 new managers who'd done that, 10 new managers. This year, 16 out of the 29 new managers who basically were doing these things. So here's kind of the steps I'm going to give you, the March steps. Okay, if I'm giving strategy on this related to March, here's what I would do. Number one is AM staff preparation. So I heard back in the mid 2000s when Mike Murrell and the Chicago division were just killing SC2 pushes. I heard this thing about getting assistants committed early, and didn't probably do a good job. Obviously didn't do a good job of it. Didn't have those things, but I realized, I was like, hey, this is an area. And as we started to get good at it, I started looking in depth at the numbers. And it's amazing how much of our success comes from our assistant manager staff that is prepared ahead of time that I'm going to go be the leaders of this thing. So as you're doing your assistant manager training and you're setting expectations for this summer, this is a major part of your training, is that, hey, here's when SC2 push is, here's what we want to get accomplished in SC2 push. This is what you're going to be the leader of during SC2 push. And it's kind of built there. And if you stop and think for a second, if you get an assistant manager tied into SC2 push in March, they're there all summer. Like, they're not leaving you, they're not going away, because everything is pointed to this finish line, so to speak. And that finish line is that SC2 push. And if they have the success, there is no finish line for them then at that point, because it's like, once they have that, it's like, I want to do this again, or I want to be part of something bigger. And it just moves that into a bigger will. bigger win. So now, so I'm going to make sure, again, patience here on this one. This is not a 1-year win. Okay. You'll have to get some wins to start this process, but you may start talking about it this year, but some of your people may not even understand it or really truly go with it, but some of you will. Okay. So be patient with this. Okay. As you go through. So that would be the first thing. So when would I want to talk about some of these things? I would want to talk about them obviously in your management trainings, but I'd also want to have conversations with your assistants about SC2 push, but then going backwards and going, hey, one of the keys to having a good SC2 push is to have a good SC1 push. So we need you at SC1 to be a leader. We need you to show other people how pushes actually work. Okay. So in SC1, you're going to teach the rest of the team how to have a good SC2. So we need you to have a good SC1. So we don't need you to break records and do 20K or 30K, but we need you to be focused on a 10K push. And a lot of our assistants don't end up at 10K during SC1, but they start showing people how to do it. And they become more ingrained in doing it as well. Okay. Having conversations about SC2 push, what we expect is absolute leadership. You know what? Here's the SC2 push dates. You need to go talk to your parents now about this. Like, you need to go reserve these times now. Like, here's the phone jams that we're doing that kick off this push. We need you to get these into your schedule now, not like later on. When we're doing our alliance meetings in the morning or every single morning during this window of time, we're going to expect you to be awake, and depending on what your theories are, in the office at those times. And all of those things are in people's schedules early, okay? Like, they're early into the schedule. Promote the positivity of 10K and 15K and 20K pushes and what that's like income-wise and how that'll make a difference for some new reps to move. So when I'm doing management, assistant manager training, and again, it's different depending on what levels your SC2s and your SC1s have been at, but I want to be talking to these people about, this is what SC1 is. Here's the dates, here's the times, here's what we expect. Here's what SC2 is. Here's what we do, and here's what we expect. And then talking about, hey, if we can get 10 here, could we get 15 here? If we can get 10 here, could we get 20 here? And what would that do for you as an assistant manager? And what kind of leadership are you providing to these people? So this is important. And then finally, the last one is building a leads base right now with these people. Like, it sounds crazy. Like, we have one of our assistants who started back with us in February and has been, started in September with us. Good kid, kind of struggled through the first 2 months, but we really flipped the switch with him. He sold 30 grand. And then the other day he said something about, well, I need to wait on some leads to come in to book some more demos. And he's supposed to be an assistant this summer. And we hadn't really started these conversations yet. And this was about a month ago. And I pulled my dom in and I was like, hey, dude, I'm like, this is the problem. Like, this is the problem because he's not going to have 150 to 250 leads come August if he's worried right now. So starting having those conversations with people that, hey, when we get here, SC1, you need to have 150 to 200, I'll call them fresh new leads. When you get here to SC2, you need to have 200 to 300 fresh. And again, fresh is a tough word, right? Because a lot of times we hear the word fresh and we go, they're brand new leads. Nah, but they're leads that they can call and book a demo with. They're not like, I've called these people 87 times, they never answer. I texted, I emailed them, I did every form of communication. Not those people, okay? The ones that I can call and have a hope of getting a demo. So that's number one, is the AM staff preparation. I think it's just major. And you go, well, what if I don't have an AM staff? Like, what if I don't have a big AM staff? What if I don't have this going into the summer? Well, you can still start this with people as you're starting to promote people through the next couple of months. But the people you have now, that's a big win. And again, if you don't have it this year, I would just put it in your notes to go, okay, I'm going to go to my calendar for February of 2022. And this is going to be, I'm going to start having my push week AM conversations. So even if I didn't have, because the first year we didn't have like, our assistants were like, why are you expecting this out of me? Like, good Lord, like this is too much. Like, I mean, but now it's kind of like, if we didn't have the conversations, it would almost be like, do you not care about me kind of conversations? Because it's like, this is what assistant managers do. Okay. All right. The second thing.
Quick question here, Stacy, to clarify. Are these conversations one-on-one? Is it done in a staff meeting type setting? How do
So,
we talk to the
so
AMs?
there's two sides of this, Trent. That's a great question. One of them is when people are promoted. I actually have a document that has that on it when they're. So it's when I sit down. So if I'm sitting down with Trent Booth and having a conversation about being an assistant for a summer, so when I'm recruiting assistants for the summer, people back from the previous summer, whatever it might be, whether that's in October, November, December, January, February, whenever that is, we actually have like a basic document. This is what the AM role is. It's these 4 things. And one of them is sales. And it actually covers, we expect this at SC1, this at SC2. So we actually talk about it when we're recruiting them. Okay, so in the recruiting process, it's talked about. Then in AM training, so if any assistant manager training that happens, we talk about it there as well. That, hey, this is just, remember, these are the 4 things we expect. And so it's the same 4 things every time. We expect these 4 things out of an assistant. And then basically out of those 4 things, one of them is push weeks and one of them is SC1 push and SC2 push. So that happens in just the natural training. And some people aren't able to attend all the training. So some of it is one-on-one, just going, hey, do you have your list together? How are you doing at building your list? Hey, I know you're in school, those kind of things. So because some people aren't working as much now, and that's why they're not going out and running branches in new districts, is because they're not doing that right now. So we kind of play those people a little more like, hey, just start building your list. 2 lists. What list? Your PR list and your names list to be able to crush the pushes.
So I hear you saying that it's an expectation from the beginning. We're not just blowing them out. It's not an expectation. This is something we're revisiting consistently and constantly.
Yeah,
it's
for
a long
sure.
game. Yeah.
And especially when it's new, if you haven't had great SC2 pushes or SC1 pushes or some of these big higher flyers. In other words, if it's always just kind of your CSPs and those kind of people who are having it, and you haven't got new people really as heavily engaged in it, it is a matter of, you might have these conversations with all your assistants in 2021 and nothing comes of it. And you kind of go, well, that sucked. I tried that, but you got to keep going. Like it's a building process to get where it's just, this is kind of the expectations of the process. It was interesting at a division meeting last year, and we did a number of things live last year, but we at a division meeting in middle of June, how many of our branches in our divisions really spread out. So it was in the smaller area of our division, and how many of our branches, all they wanted to talk about was SC2 push. And I was just like, no, it's not even SC1 yet. Like, stop talking about SC2 push. Oh, wow. Because the culture had just been driven to such a level that they were just like, but just wait till SC2, just wait till SC2. And I'm like, no, let's at least get the people through SC1. I mean, the brand new reps, they barely even know how to spell SC, so let's try to get them there. But the culture
Stacy, J. Brad Britton is asking here,
yes.
If you've got easy access to that AM document, I can make you a co-host right now. If you'd be willing to share, I think that would be something that'd be really interesting.
Of all people I don't want to share with, it was J. Brad.
He's like, I'd like to get my hands on that. I could see. A little mustache twirl. And
I can pull that up.
Let y'all screenshot this when it comes. Here we go.
Yeah.
The secret sauce. I noticed that you only gave us 1 of the 4. And it could have been because you're being kind and just keeping us on track.
The other 4. Here you go. So this is specific to the Williamson County, the pilot office. So this is basically what we cover with them. So assistant manager opportunity, you recruit, you do workshops and phone jams, you do PDI and PCs, and then you do personal sales. So that's the personal sales part that we kind of hit pretty big, which is, hey, you complete 4 appointments weekly, sell $500. You do push week expectation, complete 10 plus sales of $2,000 weekly during the push. But then SC2 push, all out focus, limited office activity. Applications, you're working every day with 3+ appointments daily. The entire push, you're attending the all call days, like in other words, whatever the call days are. So you're attending those particular things. So that's the document. Then it goes on to talk about kind of the basic office schedule, the pay structure, what you're going to make, the perks you gain out of being an assistant manager, what you basically your future is, all these things that you get out of it. So I'm more than I'll send it to you guys, and I'll send it to you guys, Jay Brad, you guys who are DVMs, you guys can have it. It's fine.
Thanks for sharing, Stacy. Sometimes
it's nothing really revolutionary.
Well, I appreciate you sharing it. Sometimes our favorite stuff that comes up was not the planned content; it's the extra stuff. So
probably the biggest thing to understand is that in the conversation, though, when the conversation goes to this here specifically to, hey, this is what we expect out of personal sales. That at this point we have communication that goes, hey, you've seen this last summer. So remember Allie last summer? This is what Allie did last summer. And they go, yeah, I remember. And if it wasn't somebody who did it last summer, or somebody who wasn't around last summer to watch it or see it, then it would be related to someone, they just go, hey, let me show you an example. And we try to again, and this is, the world's not perfect whenever you have these conversations, but if you can show them some, hey, this is what we expect, and showing them some paychecks of assistant managers, not to show the paycheck portion, like, hey, this is how much money they made, not for that, but to show their CPO on it and go, hey, here's what they did. This week they did $4,000. The next week they did $6,000. The next week they did $5,000, stuff like that. So again, all of that kind of mixed in to what's happening. And you guys might want to know this, even when we promote people, let's say week 2 of May, like, so they're a person who had a good first couple of weeks and we need assistant help, we would still want to have that same conversation. It just has to be tempered a little, right? Because you don't want to scare the person out of the room and just go, oh my gosh, I just sold $4,000 in my fast start, and all of a sudden now you're expecting me to sell $20,000 at SC2 push. Like, I can't even fathom that concept. Okay, like, you don't want to do that to them, but you want to have the conversation, because otherwise you never really get traction. Just like anything in the business, you just don't really get the traction without that.
Good. Love the long game. That's great. Thank you for allowing us to do the little rabbit trail there. Thanks, man.
Cool. No problem. Number two, 10K fast starters in the summer. So this is really part 2 of the strategy of where we saw big wins, was when we got our assistant managers involved, but then we got 10K fast starters in the summer. Early in the process, we weren't really great at getting 10K fast starters. We didn't have a great strategy for it. We didn't have a plan for it. Once we finally said, okay, part of what's going to help us have a good SC2 and SC1 push is having people who it doesn't scare them to sell 10K. Like, it's not a scary conversation to have with somebody who did 10K in their fast start to do it again at a push meet. So that was a huge win for us as well. So here's my question for you. Do you have a plan to have a 10K program this summer? And I'm a pretty big believer as a division manager. This is not most of us luck into our 10K fast starters. Like, that's really what happens. We don't really work for them. We'll take credit for them. Like, if you went through your 10K fast starter history and said, how many of them did you actually drive to 10K if you take away the last day of their fast start? If you take away day 10, that one day 10 when you paid attention to them, because you're like, oh, dude, you're there, Dan. You can get this. Like, that moment when you kind of paid attention. But I'm talking about that moment in time where you're consistently. So they come out of their fast start or they come out of their first weekend at $1,500, and you go, hey, this person has a names list, has a schedule, positive person I would like working with. I'm going to meet with them every morning and give them a nugget every morning. I'm going to make sure they have 3 demos a day. Even if they didn't make it to 10K, then I'm going to get them to 4K, 6K, 8K, that they're going to get to a higher level because of that. What's your strategy for working with those people? Because once we actually started strategizing some of those people, then when we came back to them at SC1 and SC2 and said, hey, let's do this, there was no real feel for like, okay, this is weird or this is not. It was like, oh, I've done this with you before and benefited from it. So why would I not do this again? Like, why would I not go that route? So here's a thought for you. Can you string together in May and June 3, 4, 5, 10K reps in that window of time? Now, some of your calendars may be a little different, so I'm using our calendar of May and June. So, but if I can get a new district, a branch, our own pilot, if I can get 2, 3, 4, 5, 10K type reps before I get to SC2, SC1 push, SC1 push is so much easier because I can have those people. If I can have that going into the push week, and I have some decent recruiting happening around my SC1, then I'm going to have some people doing 10K over their fast start that rolls into SC1, which actually just kind of benefits me as a whole. So I get to double dip on people who hit 10K. Okay, like I get to kind of double dip on that one, and I can kind of do both ends at the same time. So Can you string those together? And here's the thing, if a rep knows how to sell 10K in 10 days, I think most of us can do the math in our head and go, so most pushes are more than 10 days. They're 15, 16, 18 days sometimes. We can do this in 2 weeks. Like we can do this in 3 weeks. In other words, it kind of takes away. So then you don't talk to them about having 10K pushes, because it's like, hey, why would I talk to Hans about having a 10K push when he's already done 10K in 10 days? I can talk about, hey, 15K, 20K, 30K, these kind of numbers that make a difference. And we all know this. People will usually not think any bigger than we're thinking. Okay, like they really won't. Now, sometimes, as Dan Cassetta taught at SC2 many, many years ago, SC1, SC2 pushes, sometimes we might have to temper people a little bit. Like we have to temper them and go, hey, I know your goal is to do 100 grand in the push, but let's shoot for 20. Okay, like let's pull that back down here. Because otherwise, after 2 days, they quit, right? Why do they quit? Because they go, I'm not hitting my 100K and I'm disappointed. Okay. So you have to temper that a little bit and you have to pull that back. And there's strategies to that as well that you can work with. But so I think that's a big deal. So making sure that that's happening. And then, so the final thing on the 10K reps though is having a focus, having a string, and then those people prospering in the leads area of the business. Okay. That's a huge deal, because what can't happen is they sell 10K to everybody they know and then get to the end of the process and not and feel like I'm out. Like I'm how do you expect me to go again? What I would focus on if I want to have good pushes anyway, is this. I would want to have 10K focus, but 100 lead focus too coming out of it. Like, cause if I can have a rep have 100 leads coming out of their fast start, then I'm in good shape. And most reps to sell 10K are going to have to do 30 demos. So the concept of getting 100 leads is not some crazy concept. Like we're not talking about some wild concept to say, hey, you have 100 new people or 100 people that you can now call to book demos with. That's pretty positive and that's pretty powerful. Okay, so that would be the second area. So I'll stop there if there's questions on that part.
Questions on anything up to now, folks? I've been taking tons of notes there. Johnny, go ahead. You can ask it live here.
How would you go about tempering reps? Because I've had that before, but I myself like to go for big goals. So I usually just get really, really excited for them. But how would you go about tempering them?
So you're asking a whole other workshop question. So so it's like that's the tough one. Here's the quick answer. It depends on the rep if you want to temper them or not. So maybe you're not the person that should be tempered. Maybe you're not that, Jonathan. Maybe you're the person who actually should go, you're going to get this. We're going to go after this. We're going to do these things. And you shouldn't temper that like at all. There are people though, who, their lead base is light, their schedule's light. They haven't really accomplished maybe that before, whatever that thing is. And by the way, don't hold them back from that, meaning they've never done 10K in a push, so they'll be tough. No, because that's totally different conversation. I'm talking about somebody who's they're at $6,000 in sales and they go to an SC prep meeting and they go, I'm going to sell 30K in this push. And it's like, I don't know about that. We had a young man do that this summer. He worked mid-May till middle of July at $6,000 in sales and then did 30 grand for SC2 push. Okay. So we've had that before, but it's just that, but he always had the talent to do that. He just wasn't working to deliver on that talent. So you just have to look at that. The best way to temper anybody to help them out, and I believe this is a Dan Cassetta thing too, if I remember appropriately, and that is when you tell them how to hit their push week goal when you're helping people. So if you say a person has a 10K goal, and let's just say as an example, the push is 15, 16 days. Okay, let's just use that you go, hey, the first 3 days are only like 10%. That's 10% of the goal. Like, so in other words, if your goal is 10K, you only have to be at $1,000 by Thursday night. That's it. If you're at $1,000 by Thursday night, you win. And then what you do is you load them up with demos on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, and they sell $1,000 on day one. And you're like, dude, you're already at your number before Thursday. Hey, could you get ahead of your number? And you mentally adjust them so they're not going, because here's the problem. What people do is they go 10K divided by 14 days. I need to sell 7K a day, or I need to sell $700 a day. Something like this people do in their mind, right? They got to sell $700 a day. And then the first day they go out and they sell 300 and they're like, oh, I'm behind. And the next day they sell 600. So they're at $1,000. They're actually having their best week ever in 2 days, like for many people, or having their best week since their fast start in 2 days. But in their mind, they're like, I'm already behind by $800. I'm already behind by $600. And then by day 3, they don't even want to come in. They don't want to show up to the office. They don't want to get on the phone jams. They don't want to do this stuff because they kind of lost enthusiasm because they don't feel like they're there. But it's like, hey, 10% by Thursday, then another 15% by the next, but by that Sunday night. Okay, so you got then Friday, Saturday, Sunday to get another 15%. So all you have to be at is $2,500 basically by Monday morning. And then you just keep stringing it out, 20%. And one of the things that has worked out really well, which is again not on my list, but it could be a topic for some other time, is finishing pushes has been such a major big win for us. Is that hey, the how many of our people, you division managers will respect this one a little bit more. In the last 24 hours of our SC2 push, we sold $125,000 last year at the end of our SC2 push. That was our division report. So it was crazy big, but finishing the push. And part of that is just keep going, just keep going. The magic doesn't happen at the beginning. The magic happens at the end. So in tempering a rep on the front side, you can do it by, if you know the rep is probably not there, just going, hey, let's start by getting you to this goal and let's adjust. But then really the best way to temper anybody is just to keep that in mind, 10%, 20%, 30%, like hitting these numbers. And then what I always try to do is with reps who get ahead of the number is adjust their goal up. Like in other words, so if you get a person who goes out in day 1, sells their goal is 10 grand and they sell 2 grand on day 1, then to go, hey, let's pull your thermometer out and redo it. Like, cause in other words, we need to redo your thermometer because you're going to sell more than 10K. And sometimes they'll go, well, I just want to hit the 10K and then I'll go from there. Okay, great. But we got to hit the 10K by Monday. Like, so we got to hit it by, and then redo the thermometer. 2 summers ago, I had a young lady named Kendall. She, her goal is to do 15K. She hit 15K by the end of the middle of the second week. We redid her goal to 20. She hit 20. We redid her goal to 25. She hit 25. She tried to quit at 20. She tried to go, I'm done. I've hit my goal. I'm out. So I had to induce her with more things, but we just kept going. No, there's more, there's more, there's more. And she ended up selling $28,000. She sold 4 of it the last day, just because it just keep going. There's always a little bit more in there concept. So you can always use that to adjust up to if you need to. So just the concept of like 10, then 15, and then work with it, what makes sense to you and your pushes, because it's going to be different based on the time frame. So, a 17-day push is different than a 15-day push, different than an 18-day push, things of that type. So that's how I would go about it. It's kind of a long answer for, just work with your people individually.
Thank you.
Cool. Third thing on the push is great, that it made the push great, is our branch managers. That's the third level of things that have made it great. Get them involved in the process of going big. When we saw the big movement divisionally, it was without a doubt our branch managers who did that. Last year, we had 12 branch managers. 8 of them did over 6K for the SC2 push. 6 of them did over 10K. 2 of them did over 15K. 1 did 40K. So that group of people, you can only, well, let me just put it this way. The 6 people who hit 10K were branch managers. Every single one of the branch managers who hit 10K also had reps who hit 10K with them. In other words, so they brought people with them in that process. A crazy number that we have this year is we have more people launching as new managers from our branch managers than we do from our district managers. Because of that same reason. My belief is it's because of the same reason anyway. Because when those branch managers have success. Now, if you're a district manager sitting here going, okay, so how do I do that with my branch managers now? Like if you're a division manager, it's a little different, but if you're a district, you're going, so how does that play out for me personally? Well, what I would be doing is having conversations similar to your AMs with your BMs based on your division strategy. So this is important to talk to your division manager about and have a strategy specifically for your branch managers. Like, how do I specifically make sure? Like we made a strategy 2 years ago, 3 years ago now with the branch managers, because I was tired of our branch managers not taking advantage of the straight 50%. And I go, all I need to do is just get them to work during SC2 push and they'll take care of the straight 50%. What came out of that is that out of our 10, 12 branch managers, whatever it was 2 years ago, All of them came back and worked in some capacity the next summer. 2 of them as returning branches. This year, out of our 12 branches that went out last year, 8 of the 12 are back in some position, or 9 of the 12 are back in some position this year, and 7 of them are running another office this year. With that, so that strategy of those branch managers to have a strategy, and ours was pretty simple. Ours was, and again, live offices a few years ago, so play along here when you hear this, was number one is you have to request every single service call lead in your area as soon as you get access to it. You have to request every single one. We taught them how to do service calls the right way, like service call elite training. Like we had that at SC1 for our branch managers specifically. Like we went, hey, we are going to train. You will go sell during SC. Like we actually set up a caller to book demos for them, okay, at SC1 for SC2. Like we were very intentional. Now, what's interesting, we didn't have that same intentionality this year, but we got all the same results because they watched the previous year's branches kind of do it. It was kind of like, it was just kind of there. So we didn't do a good job of it this year. Obviously, virtual offices, people, like different world, like it was, obviously in 2020. But so with that combination of things, though, the branch managers were really, really important to the success. Again, if I was a district manager, I'd be just having the same conversations I'm having with my assistant managers with my branch managers. So if I have 2 branches going out as a district, same conversation. Like, hey, when we get to SC2 push, this is what's expected of you. When we get to SC2 push, you're gonna be taking full advantage of this. When we get to SC2 push, you're getting straight 50%. And by the way, if you guys can show your people straight 50% paychecks from your branches in the past, from your division manager, if they can share them with you, oh my gosh, these guys straight 50% paychecks are crazy, by the way. Like we don't realize how crazy they are until we realize how crazy they are, right? Like when you have a rep who sells $6,000 and you get like straight $3,000, it's a big paycheck for people. Just realize my branch could fail financially, but I could succeed financially if I just go out and sell $10,000 in a couple months. Like I can do this. So that's such a big deal. Now that we want them to fail, obviously. So with that, when you look at it, these 3 groups are kind of what we lean on within the division to really make the push weeks great. The assistant manager group, the fast starters that we can harvest, and then the branch managers. Now there's 100 other little parts to the programs and stuff, but really if you just kind of focus on those 3 areas, that's what'll move you. And most great results, if you think about it in anything we do in our business, don't come from new rep leadership. Like when it just doesn't work that way. It works because of veteran leadership, whatever the word veteran means to you. Oh, they've been here for 2 weeks, they're a veteran. Okay, well, that's fine. But the point is that it's more veteran leadership. So leadership to show the new reps, to show the people, to get by it. People aren't scared about, we're starting at 7 o'clock every morning during SC2 push, that nobody's scared of those particular things. That's really where it's at. And if that's the case, then we're in really good shape. So I'm going to stop there and come up for air, and we'll go to the next topic here in just a second.
Questions, my friends? You can. I've been writing mine down here as opposed to dropping them in the chat. But questions or points of clarification we're looking for from Stacy here, or we'll let him just keep blasting. It's like drinking from the fire hose of awesome. I love it. Get AMs committed.
Dan's point here, by the way, Dan's point in the chat, you should probably read that. That's a pretty big one, because of the fact that building momentum part. If you as a manager understand that's the push, that it's a building momentum part. Most people don't really realize this, and knock on wood, and not to jinx anything, but last year our SC2 push as a division, again we're talking divisional numbers here, the first week was the smallest of the 3 weeks. The second week was the second, and the third week was the biggest. And the third week is 3 days. And It was still bigger than week 1 and 2.
So just to emerge what Dan wrote in the chat here, just so it's captured on the video here. But when we were talking earlier about tempering the reps that come in, let's say with a $60,000 goal, and they're at $6K in career sales, connecting to how many demos the massive goal would take. And I heard Stacy, even you describing kind of talking about the activity even more than the results, perhaps, especially on the front end there. If they're aware of what the activity required would take, then sometimes that'll kind of pull them back to earth here. And if we get them excited about at least the activity, then we can kind of talk up the results in the back end there. Dan also shared a brand new rep in Chicago who was at about $3K in sales, once sold $72,000 for a push. So tempering does not mean discouraging, but you want people to connect the goal with the amount of work it will take. Often when you do this, people back off the goal because they were never really committed in the first place. Better to have them set a goal that they could commit to. And in many ways, that seems to describe a word that I use a lot when I'm talking about coaching, and that's relevance. If they don't feel that the goal is relevant, they're not really going to have a shot at it. So I'd rather them have a relevant goal that they'll commit to as opposed to that pie in the sky and just get blown out. Dan's further point says, to this point Stacy is making, I once did a study of a large number of people in my office who had push periods over 10K but under 12K. Filtered out the massive ones, basically. The average CPO for the first week for all of those reps was 3,600. And this was in the day of 14 to 15 day pushes. Average week 2 was about 6,700. So most people tend to build momentum, let's say 2x whatever that first week was, and that math seems to be working with your group there, right?
Yes, very much. Like that is it. Because our pushes are either 15 days or 18 days. Like that's generally how they're playing out right now. It's 15 and 18, and it's very similar. Again, that day 15, 16, 17 seem to be really big for us right now. That is partly a cultural thing too, though we've kind of developed over the time that the champions finish strong mantra of just, it doesn't matter what you're at. And we have so many examples now that it's unfair if you haven't done something like this, but we literally have I just go to our, nowadays it's just the view orders thing, and I just go back to, here's the last 3 days of the push from 2018, from 2019, from 2020, and the numbers are always like, hey, this rep was at $3,000 and they got to 10 grand, and this rep was at $2,000 and they got to 10 grand, this rep was at 8 grand and they got to 15 grand, and so it's just, it doesn't matter where you're at. There was a terminology there that you used and Dan kind of hinted at in his message, which is activity, not accomplishment. If you don't take anything else away on how to really manage a rep during a push week, just write that one down. Activity, not accomplishment. I do an SC2 kickoff meeting as a DVM for all of our people, and it's really a prep meeting, if you want to call it that. It's really a prep meeting that I run, and that is the message. It's activity, not accomplishment. I don't really care what your goal is. All I really care is that you're committed for this 15 days or these 18 days to activity. That's it. I don't care about anything else. So when you go 0 for 5 on your first day of the push, I don't care, because it's not about it's about activity. It's not about accomplishment. And that again, that mantra, that feel runs through the blood of the people. Just, it doesn't really matter what the sales are. It's activity, not accomplishment. And how many times that gets posted in GroupMes and WhatsApps and all those kind of things is crazy, just to watch them throughout the offices and the division. Just, hey, activity, not accomplishment, activity, not accomplishment. I went 0 for 5 today. I had 6 demos, had 4 cancel, and 2 people told me I was an idiot. Activity, not accomplishment. Like that. It's just, it doesn't matter. It's activity. Am I doing the right activity? And I focus all the activity on phone time. My activity is, okay, hey, I don't really care anything other than, if every day you'll make your 20 to 40 calls in the morning, and you'll do your 2 all-day phone days, 2 or 3 depending on the size of the push, 2 or 3 days, then you'll be fine. Like, it's just active. Just as long as you do that activity, everything else will be there. So, and there's a lot built into it. I would just go back to those 3 things though, guys, and just start with the simplicity of, get your AMs committed, get a few 10K fast starters, and get your branch managers who are working with you committed. And if you just start there, it's going to grow and grow and grow and grow to the point, and it'll grow faster in today's vector, just because we have so much more. Well, let me put it this way: there's a lot of knowledge out there on how to do it, and a lot of great places to do it. Dane's obviously great at it in the North Star division. Chicago division is the masters of this thing. Dane Cassetta, I think, was the original person who actually made push weeks good. So we have the people that all you do is just kind of fall in line and adapt it a little bit. As I like to say, or as I think this a little bit, I don't really come up with anything new. Like, I'm pretty sure that activity, not accomplishment, came up from somebody. So that old commercial that was like, we don't make the things you make, we make the things you make better. I don't know if I ever make anything. I'll just make the things that are out there maybe a little better too. Cool. Second topic. Let's keep rolling. This is I don't know if this would be some great insight for you. So Drew Frank said 4 years ago, after my first son started selling Cutco back in 2015, my first son, he's like my second son, but my first son who sold Cutco started selling Cutco. He said, dude, this should be an SLC message. Like you should do this as an SLC message about what you learned from your son selling Cutco. Okay. Because I started telling him, look, like we made adjustments to our training manual from what he did. Like, because I was like, dude, we need to do this because they can't. So you know the little text that's in there. I don't know which manual you guys use. And I say manual, my vector demo or whatever it is. The one that talks about text the person to say, hey, this is whoever. Like, are you available? Like that came out, like at least in our region, from when my son started selling Cutco, and I'm like, he couldn't get a hold of all these people that were my wife's friends. And I was like, what? Why are they not picking up the phone? They know him. Like, and it's like, I don't understand. But as soon as he sent a text, hey, this is Ethan Campbell, and my wife's name is Stacy too. It's Stacy Campbell's son, because my friends, I don't have friends. They would have been you guys would have been my friends that he would have called. So he goes, as soon as he sent it, it was like instantaneous. He got responses back. And so he just started texting like, hey, this is Campbell, you have a quick second? They'd be like, yeah, what do you need? And then you pick up the phone and call him and book a demo. And I was like, okay, this needs to be in the training manual. Like how we escaped this for so many years of this not happening. So that is a very minor example of what happened. Okay. Like I taught this is my middle son, the first one who sold Cutco. I taught him on the way home from training, live demo days. I taught him on the way home from training how to do the ultimate and signature close. Because I didn't think he was scared of the ultimate and signature price, because, well, his whole life had been built around people bought Cutco, obviously, right? So I taught him this, not because I thought he was something special. I just didn't think he was scared of it, because the premise of why we don't teach that to people is what? It's not that customers are going to get feared. It's that your reps are scared of 12, 13, 26, let alone saying, yeah, drop $3,000 to them. So we know that's the case. So I was like, let me see if this works. Well, what came out of that was going, okay, well, I don't, there's been a handful of reps I've done that with. But what I also know is that I can teach that to some reps sooner than others. Like I can teach them how to get bigger orders. So there was all these things that came out of it. And I would even go as far as this. If you look at the division results in 2013, 14, 15, I was a okay division manager at the best. Okay, maybe average at the best. Having my son work here was literally like kind of in some ways reinvigorating, to the level of going, oh, there's so much more we can give our people. There's so much more we can give opportunity wise. And it really kind of reinvigorated to the point that we won a silver cup in 2018. I don't want him to get a big head and think that all of a sudden, it's all because of him, but it was definitely helpful that it reinvigorated and reconnected me, is what it really kind of did in that respect. So it really kind of opened up my eyes to this process. And when your kid is doing the program, when your child's the one, it's your friends being called, it's the people that you know, and it's your reputation as a parent. It changes the dynamic of it, and it kind of tunes you in a little bit to this process. So my middle son at this point, he's over $350,000 in career sales. He's been a DOM, he's been a PSM. He was a branch last year that sold 185,000. He's opening up as a DM this summer as well. My youngest son then started selling Cutco in May of this year. Interestingly, like he was a very great, interesting dynamic in testing of other things related to the COVID world as well. So my kids have been great guinea pigs for me. But he started in May, sold $85,000 last year as a whole, sold 60 in the summer. He's going to branch as well this summer. At this point, though, we have so many people who have children who've worked in the Cutco world, who their parents are managers, that as I was going through this, I'm like, man, we have so much knowledge of perspective, I think is the best word. The perspective is different when it's your son, your daughter, your things, and you see things at a different level, okay, in this respect. So I just decided, hey, you know what? Let me take a little bit of time and kind of go through these with you in the process. You know, like Jay Brad's daughters obviously sold Cutco. You know, Bruce has had 2 kids who sold Cutco. You know, John Wasserman has a son who sold Cutco. Jeff Bry. You know, it's like the Earls had his daughter sell Cutco. It's like the list. Lloyd's had 2 or 3 kids now sell Cutco. You know, it's like, so it's like the perspective is different. And so I just kind of reached out and said, hey, as a district manager, maybe if you're watching this, you're a branch manager, even as a division manager, there's some things maybe that you can take from this that kind of will help give you some perspective and maybe even make you a better manager, because it sure as heck made me a better manager. I'll put it that way. And I don't know if like Jay Brad would say yes to that, or if the other guys would say yes, but I think in general, definitely made me a better manager having my parent, or being a parent versus being a manager. Like it made me a better manager to everyone else. I don't know, my own kids benefited as much as the other people benefited a lot from this process. So unanimously, by the way, and I know this is vector speak, and I don't want it to come across that way, but unanimously, when we talk about great experience for people, it is really great experience for people. Like the experience that they gain, the things they gain, regardless of CPO. Okay, it's a huge win for them, and that's reality. Okay, like that is the reality of the process. Okay, so I'm going to give you here just some very elementary things that I kind of covered a couple of them. I'll give you some more, a little more in-depth things that I think are perspective related that can hopefully help you out a little bit as a manager as you go through this. And one of those things that you would say is this: is what if every rep, like every rep that you had was your brother, your sister, your son, or your daughter? How would your business differ? How would training be different? We've all had those trainings where maybe the people there weren't exactly our most excited ones, and so we cut a few corners. But when it's your son, your daughter, your brother, your sister, it's a little different. How's PDI? How good are your workshops? Do you make sure you actually complete the workshops? Like, how good are your team meetings? You know, like when one of my sons said the other day something about a team meeting, and he was like, yeah, it was kind of sucky. Like, and I was like, dang, we got to fix our team meetings. And I literally jumped in and started doing different things on our team meeting, because it was just kind of like, he was like, yeah, I'm not getting much. And I'm like, we need you to get something, like, because if you're not getting it and you actually know what you're supposed to be getting, because you're now at 80 grand in career sales or somewhere in that vicinity, like you should be getting this. So it was kind of one of those moments of, okay, we had to make some changes. So let me give you some simple stuff. Number one, we talked about this concept of things within the phone approaches and the demos. Customers don't always answer the phone. Okay, so how do you fix that? Things like we just talked about. Having parents, like one of the things my son had great success with was calling from his mom's phone, like making the phone calls from his mom's phone. Because why? Because it was as simple as everybody picked up the phone all of a sudden. Like once he started making phone calls from mom's phone, he never had an issue with people answering the phone. Like people would not answer on his phone. He'd make phone calls on his mom's phone and everybody would answer. And these are mom's friends, people she's connected to, things like that. It was amazing. Like he would do this. Now, you may say, well, what if mom's not okay with that? Well, we have to coach the reps and help them with this. But we started doing this with reps across our division, across our office, going, hey, will mom let you call off of her phone? And all of a sudden it was a magical thing that happened. So, we don't panic if it doesn't happen, but it was just kind of a simple thing in the process that was there. Some of the demo stuff, like when you see the demos, it's like, hey, we need to adjust these or those things. My youngest son, who started this summer, wanted to do some live demos. Okay, now the state of Texas is a little different than other places, but he was people that he was going to their houses anyway, because we were a little more open, and he was like, I want to go to the houses, but it was like a virtual world. Like, so how do I do this virtual my vector demo live, right? And we put in things to add rope cutting back in, add leather cutting back in, add these things back into the demo. But what we had to do? We had to make a manual, because the my vector demo didn't have that. So we made a manual. And then all of a sudden we had other reps doing some live demos. Because why? Because that was just something we could do. But it was just those little type of changes where if you actually stopped for a minute as a rep and said, or as a manager, and said, hey, what are some of these things? So the phone, referrals, like, how are they asking for referrals? How are they doing referrals? Like things of this type, which can make a difference. So number one thing is just understanding that if you tune in a little bit, there's some areas of our business that when we go just follow the program, we might need to do a little more than just follow the program. Like we might need to be a little more tuned into, we'll just follow the program, it'll work. Well, it does work, but it could work at a higher level if we were just a little more tuned in. The second thing that I think is really big that came from, and by the way, this came from multiple layers of people. Bruce talked about this, and I reached out to all the people, I say all, most of the people who have sons or daughters working here. Larry talked about this, how important their fast start is to people and how fragile their psyches are, even for the kids, the children of people who they know Cutco, people buy Cutco. How do they know that? Because that's how their college was paid for. That's how they've eaten for the last 18 years, is because they know that this works. They don't have an issue with this. Half of them have been on company trips. Like, so they've traveled the world with Vector and Cutco, but there's still that first few demos. There's still a few question marks in those first few demos. There's still, does this work for me thing that goes on in that process. Well, if you take that away from a person who's connected to us and you went to somebody who's not connected to us, we go, well, they're a PR of a 10K fast starter. They're fine. Not unless their first few demos go right. Not unless I set them up the right way. Like they're not okay. And we've seen this before, right? Like everybody on this call has seen this one before, right? Where we had a 10K fast starter who PR'd somebody and then their PR basically did 3 demos and quit. And we were like, how did that happen? Because they were sharper than their PR. Well, because they're fragile in those first few demos. So things that you can do as a manager to make sure this happens. Obviously, quality demos, right? Like quality amount of or quality demos. Like who are they doing the demos with? We know this. Like we don't have to. I don't have to teach you this. This has been taught at every SLC since the beginning of time. Every single management training you've ever been to has taught you this. But are we focused in on it? Do we realize that if we don't do that right, we could be damaging their success? Confidence building PDI that first weekend. Whatever happens, we've always been taught this, right? Whatever happens is what? It's supposed to happen. Okay, it's supposed to happen. So the minute that my son goes out and has a no sale and he's like, I can't believe that person did it. Hey, that happens. It's supposed to happen. Like you're supposed to have no sales. It's okay. But with that other rep who's not my kid, how do I relate to that? How do I instill confidence back in them on PDI that first weekend? And you can even lump in there, how important is PDI that first weekend? Okay. And we know this, but when it's your blood that it's happening to, that you realize, okay, we got to be better with all reps. Like we got to be better with all reps when it comes to quality demos, quality first weekend PDI, and really building that confidence. Because remember, as Larry said, it's just fragile psyche. Okay, it's the fragile psyche that first weekend, regardless of where they are mentally. The third thing I'm going to cover with you is probably the biggest one that came out from everybody. And there are some great stories, and I would be willing to turn the table over here to Brad here for a minute and to tell his about his daughter. I thought that was a very interesting one. But reps don't. This is the third point, which is reps in general don't really work that hard. And we should be weary of that as a manager, leery of that as manager, related to how parents view the job. Okay. So my son started selling Cutco. And here's what happened. He was a good rep who sold $33,000 in 7 weeks. Okay. So he was good at the job. Like he was very good. He launches from training. He starts doing demos. First 6 or 7 days, he was fine. Everything was good. Nothing was said. We leave on a family trip because he started right over the 4th of July weekend. So it was like his first 7 days, and then 4th of July happened and we left town and we were gone, and we came back and he starts working again. Not in a push week, just a regular Vector week. And my wife pulls me aside one day and goes, hey, should he be doing some work? And I'm like, what do you mean? And by the way, he was selling $2,000 a week is what he was selling. He was selling $2,000 a week. So to everybody on this call, he was your number one rep. He was a superstar. He was a guy who, he's perfect. Like he's a perfect rep. He calls for PDI. He does his 2 or 3 demos a day. He does it. But here's what she saw. Because she had started working. My wife didn't work for many years, but she had started working that same summer. And here's what she saw. He's asleep when I go to work. When I come home from work, he's sitting on the couch in his boxers. Sorry to give you that in your image, but he's sitting on the couch in his boxers. And then he leaves and goes hangs out with his friends. And then he comes home and he does the same thing the next day. That's what I see. And I was like, well, he went 2 for 2 today. He sold $600. He's making 30%. He made $180 today. So even when we got to the job, he'd have to be making, $20 an hour, working 10 hours to do that. Like, it's like, he's doing pretty good. But that's what she saw, was the guy sitting on the couch eating potato chips when she came home at 5 o'clock, and the guy asleep in the morning when she left. And that's what she saw. And you think about this concept, that's a live demo person who was actually leaving, going, and coming. Can you imagine what that is in a virtual world? Where they never see their kid get dressed? They never see their kid get in a professional setting. They never see we have to be very leery as a manager to go, hey, if I have a rep, think about this logically. If I have a rep who does 10 to 15 demos a week, 8 to 12 orders, sells 3 or 4K a week for our decent reps, right? They're elite. They're a high flyer. They're an all-American. 10 weeks of 3 or 4 grand without ever doing a push week, they're going to be an all-American for sure. And what do their parents see? What I just said. That's what their parents see. Jared, I would love you to share that story, what your wife said about your daughter, like if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. That very similar kind of experience, without a doubt. I will say that at least 10 times in Madison's first 8 months, my wife came to me and said, "Do you think she should go get a job at Target?" And Paulette sold a bunch of Cutco herself, but just there was so much wasted time, procrastination. Oh, I'm going to do this, but not doing it. That, I can't imagine any of our reps' parents are more positive on Cutco business than my wife is. Yet she thinks, well, she needs to learn how to be more disciplined. She needs to learn how to, go, show up to work, because, she would say all the time she was going to do this, going to do that. And we're talking someone who sold now over $150,000, but that was it. Every time she would say that, of course, I would be frustrated that she would say it, but I would be like, wow. I mean, imagine all these reps out there, that have these parents that don't understand, anything about maybe being an entrepreneur. Stacy's point that his son, he did 2 demos, he sold $600, he made $180. Well, what would he have had to do that? But parents are not usually in a mindset of, okay, work really, really smart, and you don't have to work very much as a kid, as a student, so that's a constant battle that's going on in the household dynamic. Really important. And so I'd be curious to see, as Stacy was talking, his description was a little different because the mom left and then she came back. My wife doesn't work outside the house. She was here, so she would see all those things. So she would see a little bit of work done. But I think, I mean, what's the answer to that? Is the answer that we've got to get the reps to be able to share with their parents more about what it is that they're doing? Because most teenagers, they don't want their parents to know anything about what they're doing. They don't want them talking about them when they're not around. They don't want them talking about them when they're around. They don't want to, they don't want them coming into their room. They want to be very private. They're in this time of life where they want to be very independent. But, especially if you got helicopter parents, they're going to be, all in their face. And the last thing that the kid wants to do is share what's going on. So how do we create a situation where mom sees, like if Stacy's mom, if the kid had been up in the morning at a champions club in the morning or something, maybe, in a learning capacity, or, when she got home, make sure that, they're doing something. I mean, it's almost like, I feel bad telling him to do this, but it'd be like they'd be tricking their parent to think that, they would not be themselves, and it would be in disingenuous. So I don't know that I have a full-on answer.
Yeah.
Other than
here's a few. This is. I'm glad you brought this up because this is actually when I was thinking about it, Brad. This is awesome. So when you first of all, the reason I would bring it up number one for you guys as managers is we have to be very, very paying attention to this of how your parents think. So PDI is a simple thing to go, what do your parents think? And now that you know the way parents might be thinking, you might just need to ask those questions. Are your parents worried about you not working enough because you only have 3 demos today? Are your parents like these are questions that you should ask your people and do that because we need to know. And here's the other thing. Half of our parents now are working at home, both sides of it. So they are working, they're seeing live this individual. Because think about what a parent's, and I obviously our business is different, but think about what most jobs require on the people. Because I have some friends who do this, they work at home now, and they're required to log in and stay on there and basically log out. So they're working all day because they're almost required to kind of log in, log out, log in, log out, log in, log out, log in, log out. Our reps, they need to see my opinion is the parents need to see our reps log in. So J-Brad brought up the number one thing. If you're not running, champions workshops, those type of things, you got to get reps. Not every day. They don't have to show up every day. They just got to show up every once in a while. Like they have to show up every once in a while. That part changed the dynamic, obviously. First of all, I'll give you another part of this here in a second, another layer of that part. But that I think is huge, that the reps are waking up, getting dressed, and making them get on professionally. Like that's the other part of it I think that's important. So if they wake up in their t-shirt and whatever, no, you at least got to put on a dress shirt, right? Like you at least got to do that. Hey, when you show up to you got to have a polo on at least. So at least the parents are seeing, okay, they're waking up, they're getting ready, they're doing this. I think that's a huge thing. Okay. I also think that asking the questions is a big deal, that you got to ask the questions that what the parents think. And just, this is a big question to ask. Hey, have your parents ever asked you to get another job because you're not working enough? Just ask that question, because we know this, right? As soon as the parent says, go get another job, and the kid goes, they succumb to that and they go get another job. The kid who was doing 2 to 3 demos a day stops doing 2 to 3 demos a day, and they do 2 to 3 a week.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the problem, because when we lose them to the second job, what does the second job do? They work them.
Right.
They actually work them. And now they're working 25, 35, 40 hours a week. Well, now that 25, 35, 40 hours a week deal, they don't want to do more demos. They only want to do a couple of demos that basically the customer calls them for almost, right? Like where it's people are interested. So you have to be really careful of this. So I think those questions are big. Those questions are things. So kids wake up. Go ahead. Yeah.
Stacy, I'm just wondering, even if one of the questions we could ask during PDI is, do your parents know how much you're making? Do they know how much you've made, right? So this is one of them, because my daughter sold Cutco, and I had no idea how much she actually made. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I know how the business works. I assumed it was a certain amount, but if we could just have the kid leading with that with the parents and looping the parent in, hey, just to let you know, this is what I made this week, that might take a little pressure off. The parent might think it's weird, but at least the kid's making money. You know?
I think so. Here's if you're taking notes, here's what I would say. One, your rep needs to be active. What can you do? Early workshops, get them up, get them on PDI on Zoom. Like make them Zoom PDI with you versus just talk to you on the phone. Get them up, tell them they got to be dressed decent. Make sure they're on the phones in the morning. Even if they only make 10 phone calls, just have the parents here in their room. There's something happening. Make sure their parents see them working. Second thing is we need to teach our reps to talk to their parents. It was actually one of the things I put as my notes. You got to learn to talk to your parents properly. So what they are doing today. So after you have this conversation, hey, Trent, your parents, what do your parents think of the job? Well, they're still skeptical. They're still not sure. Well, my parents are fine. Fine as in they're okay with you doing 2 or 3 demos a day, doing this. Like they're okay with that. Yep, they're totally fine. Great. So you're not going to call me back 2 days from now and go, hey, my parents that want me to get another job. Your parents fine. No, they're fine. Okay, great. Then I don't really have to have it. No, my parents aren't. But hey, here's some conversations to have. Tell them what you're doing today. Tell them what you're doing. Hey, I'm doing phone calls here. I'm doing this here. I'm doing this here. I'm doing this here. I'm going to go to the team for the meet. This is what I'm doing today. I'm really trying to be productive. If you have any other names to give me, that'd be awesome. So in other words, like being productive, like teach reps how to talk to them properly. Income is a huge one to me. Hey, yeah, mom, how'd your day go? Great. Hey, by the way, I thought it was really cool. I did 3 demos today. I sold On 2 of them, I sold $500. Matter of fact, I made $150 today. Now, sometimes kids don't want their parents to know that because they're trying to mooch off their parents and they don't want to know how much money they're making. But the fact is, if we want to keep our reps around, we probably need to tell them you have to have some conversation about that. Or here's a better conversation. How about this one? Hey, mom, I saved $150 today. So if you don't hey, I was able to save $150 today. Like, from what I was doing. And I did it from my house. So I did it with only going to the neighbor's house or whatever, like you're doing. So we need to teach our reps how to talk properly to them. Okay. So there's a lot of unproductive hours for our reps. Let's put it that way. So when our reps talk about how hard they work, there's a lot of unproductive hours. Now, if I can loop this back to my first message, which was the push weeks kind of cure a lot of this because it pushes the other direction.
Sure.
And goes, hey, because then parents, when they see them going so hard during pushes, when they come out of the pushes, they're almost like, good, I'm glad to see you're not working so hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Stacy, do you do parent meetings as well?
Okay, well, this is my last point. So Dave Powder's parent meeting thing that he was doing this summer, I think you guys probably should go back and watch that. And especially you guys who are doing virtual, 100% virtual stuff. And even if it's not 100%, you get what I'm saying with virtual. Just your main things are all virtual. I think that's a really big deal. I think that's a big deal. So we got to be careful, by the way, that as the COVID feared world, as I call it, not the COVID, I don't think is going away, but the COVID fear world goes away, that we have to be even more tuned into this one. Okay, because as restaurant jobs come back, the stores come back, the things, and I can say this person living in the state of Texas where things are back. Okay, like they're back here. Okay, like we're not, there's not a lot of fear stuff here comparatively to what I watch on the news anyway. So it's one of those things where you got to be careful to go, okay, is my communication, my system, one that basically will allow for our reps to be able to continue to work and continue to drive forward? Because in a live world, there are unproductive hours. You can only imagine what it's like probably in the virtual world with some of our people.
I know that Danny Lewis had a great message as well on parent meetings. So if you haven't seen that, folks, I definitely redirect you to that one as well. But I'm not certain if either of them. I think that Danny has taken a page out of, it might actually even be Ben Jackson's parent program, where he's promoting that, hey, coming up is going to be push week. But I'm not sure we're handling, hey, just in case you see your kid getting up at noon, doing a couple demos. We're probably not handling that, right? That's a great point to bring into parent meetings.
Yep, for sure. All right, next point here, and we'll keep rolling for time's sake. Every rep is different. Okay, and this is one of the great things I learned from my kids was every rep is different, and we need to be attentive to the concepts in our training, and we need to be inquisitive of the reps of how they feel in training. Okay, I'm going to use a very specific example here that scares me a lot going backwards in time. And my wife, who's in social work, laughed at me and goes, maybe you should have known this a long time ago. And I was like, well, my son didn't show up a long time ago. So my youngest son started working this summer. He has pretty serious dyslexia. Okay, he struggles reading. Like literally, he struggles heavily. Doesn't want to read. Doesn't want to take time reading because it's tough. Like it's a tough thing that he deals with physically, right? So in training, here's a guy who's seeing his brother sell a couple $100,000 worth of Cutco, being a good branch manager. Obviously has little to no fear of the job whatsoever. His first day of making phone calls, you guys would love this. He made 52 phone calls to book 4 demos. Okay, like so that's how little fear he had. Okay, like that he was just, and he didn't get mad about it. It was just like, oh yeah, whatever. Like it was just like, wow, this is crazy. And then we get to the end of training, and he was seeing a lot of people already own Cutco, obviously. So he's seeing a lot of people already own Cutco. And he said, we were trying to just kind of fix some stuff up. And he goes, I'm having a hard time. And we were doing the MyVector demo, like the MyVector demo, basically all kind of on your phone or on the other part of the screen, doing our Cutco demo on the other side, or your Cutco demo on the other side. And he was struggling, bad. And he goes, it'll be fine. He goes, I don't need a manual anyway. I'll just wing it and be fine. And everybody in the office, me, my older son, who is also, his office is down the road, but we weren't, like, there was no office down the road at that moment. Like, so his office, his people, my Dom, one of the assistants, we all just, you could just see our faces melt, like in anger and Like, you're going to wing it. Like, nobody wings it and is successful. Like, you're going to fail. So literally I went home that night and created a manual that was easy for him to read as being dyslexic. Like, I went home and created a manual for him. All I thought in my head as I was creating this manual was this one thing. How many reps have we looked at and said, in our mind, not out loud, God, this person can't read. They're an idiot. Who could have sold $65,000 at Cutco in a summer? Like, then it went from there to, let's take that scenario away. But how many other basic little things that have existed that we scared away a really great rep because we just didn't pay attention? Like, because we didn't know, one, because we never asked the question, or the question was asked, but we didn't really want an answer. Like, how are you feeling, Trent, with training? I feel good. Perfect. Good. Thank goodness. I didn't want you to say you weren't feeling good. Like, and that's the question we ask versus, hey, how do you feel about using the manual? How do you feel about, like, calling people that you know? How do you feel about like what's your true feelings? And having that quality conversation with people, day 1, day 2, day 3, whatever it is for you, to have that quality conversation to make sure there's not the person who just goes, I'm just going to wing it because I feel better that way. And we all know, if my son, who knows everything about Cutco, knows all this stuff and was confident and made the calls, would have just went out and tried to wing it with a fragile early psyche of demos, we know what the end result is. He probably is back doing his lifeguarding job that he did a summer ago, wishing that somehow he could make the same amount of money as his brother. Like, is what he was wishing. Like, so we need to dig in. We need to look at that. So what other reps do we scare away by just not being inquisitive, not asking, hey, Trent, how do you feel about training, and getting that answer that we want, but not really getting the answer we need? So I think that's a big deal. So that was a huge win, for me mentally this summer, was to stop and talk to reps and really go, especially virtually, man, because we don't really know how they're feeling. Like, it's hard to tell. Like, all of you look good, you feel great, they're fine, okay, but in they're sitting there watching, something else on their computer screen, so it's like that concept of, hey, I need to make sure that I'm really tied in with these. So spending time getting to know and understand, that's a big deal. Here's another one for you. They need to learn the approaches. They need to role play. You need to do it with them. Larry Manley brought this up. They need to do it over and over and over again. Just because they're sharp doesn't mean they get it. Okay, that was the other one. That was something Larry brought up, was just because they're sharp doesn't mean they get it. Okay, so that's a big deal. Now you would go, well, of course we all know this, but do we really do it? Do we spend the time with them? Now, we end up spending the time with our kid doing it, but would we spend the time with somebody else doing it as well? Another point is you need to be a listener a lot of times, not a fixer. So I don't remember if this was Earl who said this, I believe, but you need to be a listener, not a fixer. You don't have to fix everything. You just need to let them talk sometimes. It's easy when it's your kid, right? Sometimes it's not so easy when it's something else. But just sometimes just keep, what else do you feel? How else do you feel? How else do you feel? How else do you feel? What else is going? What else? Like, and just keep bringing them, right? Just keep bringing them. Just keep bringing me the information. Like, because then it's like, so do you want some help with that? I just need to get it off my chest. Like, it's like, okay, like, great, let's move on. And especially some of your top reps, that's how it is, right? During the middle of a push week, they don't need anybody to fix them. They just need to go back and do their demos because they're going to make sales the next time. They don't need a fixer. They just need a listener a lot of times. This is another point. We need to know more about our top reps' lives. Now, some of this you might say connects back to some of these other things, but the ability to connect with these people virtually. Bruce said this, 2 sons who sold Cutco. One was immersed in the office, was his words, had really more fun, more success, more attracted to the business. One not immersed in the office, totally different feeling. So the immersion into the office. Now, you said, what if I'm running a virtual office? You can still immerse people, but they have to be immersed, meaning your morning workshops and things have to be community is the word I would use. There has to be a community. You all know what community is, right? Because we've all know what community is. Like, every one of us on this call know what community is. Part of the reason we exist right now in Vector is because of the community that exists. Are we creating that for our reps? Do we create that for our reps? Current virtual world or live world? Is there a community for our reps. I had a representative, a branch manager who told my Dom, I don't think I would have survived in your office, like meaning the pilot office. She's in my ADVM's office. And she goes, I don't know if I'd have survived in the pilot office. And she goes, why? Because she goes, I don't think you're as much fun as our office. And I'll be honest, their office is very fun. Our office is very, these are the rules, you stick to them and you have success. Similar success numbers, by the way, like from a CPO standpoint, but two different things. But one person, the community meant everything. We didn't have that same community that would exist with her. Now, the argument is, well, she was in a different community to start with, would it have been different? But for her, that was a big deal. So community is a big deal. So here's some other things we need to know about our top reps. What are your significant others? Like, who are your significant others? How important are they? How attached are they? Like these questions we need to know. I know we know this stuff, but sometimes we don't. Like, you know, my youngest son's very much attached to his girlfriend. Like, he's got to have time with her. And so during push weeks, I had to build in time for him to be with her, or else I wouldn't have got a $20,000 push out of him at SC2 if I wouldn't have done that. Dan Cassetti used to be great about this. Like, he would tell people you have to take a day off of the push halfway through. Like, we literally would go like Friday and Saturday. He did not work during the pushes on Friday and Saturday for that purpose. And he still sold 20 grand because I knew he was talented enough to sell 20 grand. So you know what happened? I started going, I wonder if there's other people who have that same issue. And I started finding out that yes, there are. There's this guy who plays rugby. And if I tell him that he has to show up every morning and to these morning phone jams during his rugby practice, I'm going to lose him. So instead I was able to go, oh, this rugby is so important to you and it's in the mornings. You don't have to miss it. Can you miss 2 of them? Can you miss 2 of them here and here and here for some? So just knowing our reps better, their money situations, right? What do they need? This goes back to the parent stuff. Can you talk about money with your parents? Can you not talk about money? Like, can you do this? We need to know this about them. Your parents' thoughts, like we always want to know the parents' stuff, but do we ask that question enough? You know, emotions are real. You know, one of the things that Earl talked about was missing goals are okay. Like learning that concept that, hey, a goal, missing it is okay. But the challenge of trying to hit it is really where it's at. It's about the journey as much as the destination, so to speak. Great lesson he learned, you know, when Kennedy was selling, was because of that. Challenges are real for these reps, okay? They really do deal with challenges on a day-to-day basis. We become disconnected with their, if we a lot of times are disconnected and don't sense they're down. Like our best reps are down. Like we become disconnected because it's just like, well, they're fine, they're good. They've sold 20K, they've sold 30K, they've sold 40K, but we're not connected. So really connecting in with your top reps this summer and now, we have to be in the know is kind of the idea. And the impact we can have on them is so big because of that. I'm going to finish up here with just a couple of quick ones. Sales promotion, the power of sales promotion. Woss said this. Always having something to shoot for. He goes, Vector gives something to shoot for constantly, and how much that benefited his son was just that constant having the next thing to shoot for, the next thing to shoot for. But I got to think about how many of our reps, and when he gave me this, I got to think about how many of our reps literally don't have anything they're shooting for right now. Like right now as we speak. We launched them a month ago, and right now we have not given them anything to shoot for. How many of your reps, when they share their goals, actually do a good job of it? like, do we specifically in advanced training make sure that they, like, this is what I would do if I were you, we put this into our advanced training, hey, let's do a goals section of training. Advanced training. They have to have a goals section where they put together their goals for their fast start. They come out of their fast start. What do they need to do? Have a new set of goals, right? That they talk about. Like, what am I going to do? And by the way, there's always something to shoot for, right? There's always something there. Not just push weeks, not just All-American, not just things. President's Club is always there. How do they know how to explain President's Club well? Or do they just read what's there in the website, the manual? Like, you know, so these things are what we need to be doing with power promotion. We need to make sure we are good, that our staff is good. Reps can't feel, by the way, that they're just as good as your staff, even if they are. Because sometimes they are, by the way, but your staff needs to go, hey, you always are. My original division manager said something that I always remember, which is they have to look at you and they have to go, man, I want to be like that person. That's who I want to be like. And your staff has to be that way too. That they're always kind of, they never come to the, I'm going to use the live office concept. They never come to the office where a person would show up and look better than them. When they get on Zoom, nobody looks better than them. Okay. And again, you can get away with some of this without that happening, but man, if you can make that happen, it's such a big thing. All right. Last one is this. Our reps are human. And that's a crazy concept. Okay. That they're human. What does this mean? We think we can just a lot of times go. So come out of your fast start. Now you're out of your fast start. Now what you need to do is you need to go do, a 3K the next week. Okay, after your 3K the next week, we start a push week, and then you need to go hard for the push week. And then we have that 4th of July week. And 4th of July is like everybody sells during 4th of July. And I got to have this top rep sell during 4th of July because all my other reps are out of town. So if I don't have my top rep sell during 4th of July, then I'm not going to have anybody selling during 4th of July. So they got to go. And then we get out of 4th of July, and then we got SC2, and you got to go for SC2. And it's like we don't realize they're a human being. And in that process, you've taken a weekend off. You took 4 days off of her to get yourself recharged, but you never let them. You never let them stop and be a human being. Now, you may say, well, that kind of contradicts that they have a lot of free time. But there's a difference between planning time to kind of be away and just taking time off. Because when those reps are sitting there at home, you know what they think they're doing? They think they're working. You can ask J-Brad's daughter, you can ask my kids.
I thought I was working.
I thought I was working because why? Because I was thinking about selling Cutco. I was thinking about it. Thus, it became work. So, how many times have you had a rep say to you, I felt like I worked all day today. Yeah. And it's like, you did 2 demos and you got on the phone this morning. But they woke up and they thought about it. And they waited till 1 to do their first demo, thinking about it. And then they went and did their 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock demos. And then they went home. And then you told them to get back on the phone that night, right? So even though they had a 4-hour break, then they got back on the phone. So in their mind, they woke up at 8 o'clock and went to bed at 9 o'clock, or they finished at 9 o'clock and they worked Cutco the entire day. So being understanding of this, we need to be more strategic with our reps would be a good idea. Calendars, schedules, like having them organized, such a big thing. So that way it's like, no, you're not working here. You're off. You're off at 5 o'clock that day. You're not doing that. Now, would I do that in the fast start? No. Okay. But I would do that once I get out of their fast start. Well, what if they roll into a push week? Great. Well, after the push week, I'm going to do that. So do we ever just stop and think, what is the person thinking about the job? And then flipping it to what if I was in their scenario, what would I be thinking? And if you just stopped today and pulled out your web PDI and went, what does this rep think about the job? What if I was in their position and and look at their paychecks and go, these are my paychecks for the last 4 weeks. And this is what I have set up for this week. This is what I'm thinking about the job. You'll be a better manager. Like you'll have a different perspective on things. So it's very important that we realize our reps are humans. They have real emotions, real feelings, real stuff. And a lot of times we just get lost and they're just another rep we're launching and they got to go sell and we got to get $1,000 first weekend PPR. And, why? Because my division manager told me if I don't get $1,000 first PPR, he's going to replace me. And, I'm just joking. That really happened. But you get my point is there's this emotion attached to it that a lot of times isn't. So for your guys' benefit, hopefully those things help you out. By the way, the list is even longer than that. I just kind of pulled the things that I thought were probably the best for you guys. So it's a great lesson. And so I would suggest, by the way, if I were you, is you know a lot of these people who have these, reach out to Trent, reach out to J. Brad, reach out to Larry, reach out to Earl and some of these people and just go, hey, what are some of the other things you kind of got perspective on? From watching your son or your daughter work with Cutco. And it's great lessons for us, really is what it is. It's great lessons. And like I said, I would just say it made me a way better manager when I viewed it through the eyes of one of my kids. And here's the thing that I figured out. I don't just have to view it through the eyes of my kids because they're my kids.
Yeah.
I can view it through the eyes that they're my kids when they're not my kids. Like when they're not my kids. Another thing that was been big for me, and J. Brad might be experiencing this at this point in his career, was when my kids' friends, who I've known since they were 2 years old, start selling Cutco. And then it's like, ooh, so these parents who I go hang out with on Friday and Saturday nights, I get to answer for their activity.
Wow.
And that might be a whole nother message. What do the parents think on the other side when it's like, oh, so I'm going to go hang out with you and have a beer tonight. What are you going to say to me about the Cutco? And making sure those people are having the same experience that your kid got, that other people got in the same process.
Stacy, that's a beautiful workshop, man. I think we might have to find a way to bring that into SLC. I mean, you've just got some outstanding content there. I got 3 pages of legit mind map notes here, and Wow. I mean, two distinct and excellent workshops, certainly related here, but thank you so much for putting the effort in to prepare and bring the goods for this in a concise manner still. I think we can all tell you've got so much more to still to be able to unpack there. Your content is so, what's the word I'm looking for? So relevant to right now, Stacy. It's fresh. And I'm really excited to see that, like, Stacy's been here like 29 years, and the best years are still ahead of him. You can tell, like, the guy's still learning about our business, like almost like he's year 1 or year 2. And to have you splash around in this laboratory that is Cutco Vector, Stacy, man, thank you so much for bringing your best here. I'm gonna hit stop on the recording here, but I'll hang around for a few minutes. If you've got extra questions or just want to kind of be the cool kids after class, let's give Stacy some jazz hands here. A round of applause. Thank you much. The snaps, the whole works there. Outstanding work, my friend. Thank you again.
Thank you, Trent.
All right.